Did you know that geopathic stress can significantly disrupt your sleep and circadian rhythms? Well, the answer to that question is absolutely yes. The circadian rhythms, which dictates our sleep-wake cycle and other physiological processes, is closely linked with the gut microbiome. This means that disruptions in our sleep patterns can lead to an imbalance in our gut bacteria, which in turn can compromise our overall health. Welcome to the Let's Talk Toxin Show. Are you feeling constantly drained and struggling with unexplained health issues, or maybe you're even having trouble sleeping? The culprit might be right beneath your feet. In this episode, we're exploring EMF exposure and geopathic stress. This is the disturbance caused by the Earth's natural and sometimes man-made electromagnetic fields. These hidden energies and modern technology might be impacting your health, especially for us women. I'll share practical remedies and strategies to combat geopathic stress and protect yourself from its subtle yet powerful effects. And stick around for the Q&A session at the end, where I answer questions from women dealing with toxic stress just like you. And if you're new here, I'm Dr. Gayla Gorman, a licensed acupuncturist, naturopath, and author of What's Your Kryptonite? I wrote the book to help women understand the effects of chronic stress that's turned toxic. In the book, I share the MOLT method I developed to make it easy to shed stress, along with the accumulated toxicity, just like any other creature in nature that's outgrown its trappings. Many women find their way to me after trying everything to deal with their annoying symptoms. You may feel like you've learned more than you ever wanted to know about health and still aren't healthy. Well, it's time for a different approach. Symptoms are directly related to stress, but stress isn't easy to master, and it isn't going away. If you're ready for a new approach that will lead to stress mastery, I highly recommend joining me for the monthly events and challenges in my Wellness Warriors membership. It's perfect for those who have a strong sense they're missing something important that's the key to optimal wellness. In the community, we apply the MOLT method I developed. MOLT is an acronym. M is for mindset, O is for order, L is for lifestyle, and T is for toxins. Those toxins that we talk about on this show. Let's talk toxins. It's an important conversation we should all be having. So the MOLT method is designed to help you shed stress and cruise through midlife symptom-free and end issues like chronic fatigue, insomnia, and even weight gain. So join us and turn your knowledge into real change. You can find out how to join the membership at drgayla.com/links. In this next segment, I share information from research studies related to toxicity. You can think of it as a toxin trend. Remember, the T in MOLT stands for toxins, and I can say with confidence that every symptom is caused by accumulated toxicity. I evaluate 12 categories of toxicity when I'm working with someone to unravel a health mystery. One of those 12 categories is what we're focused on today, geopathic stress. Our world is full of man-made substances that our bodies were not designed to deal with. Couple this toxicity with an overwhelming amount of toxic stressors the body was designed to manage, and it's no wonder women find themselves playing whack-a-mole with symptoms. So here's a report that's a great example of a toxin trend. Did you know that geopathic stress can significantly disrupt your sleep and circadian rhythms? Well, the answer to that question is absolutely yes. The circadian rhythms, which dictates our sleep-wake cycle and other physiological processes, is closely linked with the gut microbiome. So I'm sure this is not the first you've heard of the importance of focusing on gut health, but you can see that all of this is interconnected. This means that disruptions in our sleep patterns can lead to an imbalance in our gut bacteria, which in turn can compromise our overall health. The stress caused by geopathic disturbances could potentially amplify these effects, leading to a cycle of poor sleep and digestive issues. In 2024, this is a really recent study, the University College of Cork did a study on the gut microbiota's role in regulating stress response. The study revealed that the gut microbiome regulates the body's diurnal, like day-night rhythms in stress hormones, and depletion of the gut microbiota leads to hyperactivation of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal, or HPA axis. And so when this hyperactivation happens, it really dysregulates this response. And this is super time specific. This is how we regulate when we sleep, when we wake, when we have energy, when we calm down. It also affects the nervous system, which can lead to dysregulation of the immune response. So these altered stress activities really lead to an overall disruption in how our body regulates many functions. Specific gut bacteria found in the human gastrointestinal tract also can be found in breast milk. And this specific bacteria was identified to be key influencers of this circadian regulated stress mechanism. And so if you think about it, for moms who are having issues with maybe their newborn or breastfeeding child not sleeping properly, it could point directly back to this dysregulation of the gut microbiota. And so you definitely do not want to be using anything to suppress the symptoms. You want to be working on all the things that are disrupting your gut health. And so these findings really open the door for developing new microbial-based therapies that could also help individuals better manage stress-related mental health conditions like anxiety and depression. Everything is so interconnected, and really, in many cases, point back to these alterations in our circadian rhythms and the sleep-wake cycles. And so please don't suppress the symptoms. Please work to get to the bottom of what's really going on and restore your body's natural function. It's going to really make everything in your body work better, and you'll find that symptoms just recede on their own when your body is functioning properly, and everything is essentially firing on all cylinders. Chapter 12 in my book, What's Your Kryptonite, is dedicated to helping readers manage what I refer to as tricky toxins. Our bodies are bombarded with toxicity, so we have to learn to manage it. Just comment tricky toxins and we'll send you a link where you can download the chapter for free. If commenting isn't convenient, go to drgala.com/links and sign up for my Wellness Weekly newsletter. You can respond to any email you receive from me with tricky toxins and we'll send you a link. In this next segment, I'm opening the kimono to share how I was challenged to apply my suggestions. I'm walking my talk, and here's an example. Every suggestion you'll hear from me has been tested in the trenches. That includes saying no to symptom suppression. Over the past 4 decades, I've developed processes that work sustainably. Typically requires a combination of approaches that I've synthesized to address the health issues that show up repeatedly for many women. Recently, I had an opportunity to walk my talk, and here's an example of how that happens in the real world in my life. So I took a long flight to Central America, certainly arguably not as long as it could have been, but still an extended flight. And this is not regularly reported, but essentially we get a pretty strong dose of radiation whenever we fly. And this is made worse these days because an airplane is essentially a tin can. And now that we have EMFs even more prevalent with the Wi-Fi on the planes and that kind of thing, we really get a pretty significant dose of this radiation that is not doing us any good from a health perspective. So it's not surprising that we find that a lot of times we'll end up getting a cold or something like that after we travel. It's in part because our immune system gets dysregulated whenever we are dealing with these additional toxic stressors. Personally, I love to travel, so I'm not going to stop traveling. I'm going to figure out how to mitigate the damage, and I do that by preparing in advance. So I typically will shore up my immune system. I take some herbs to prepare my immune system for travel. I tend to start taking those 2 to 3 days in advance. And then I'll continue taking them for a few days after I get there. The other thing that you can do is use some form of EMF protection. Some people wear a pendant. This can be helpful. Personally, I hate wearing necklaces. I rarely wear anything around my neck. And so what I find is that if I rely on something like that, then I won't wear it regularly, and then it's not going to help when I need it. I could potentially use something that I really just use in an extreme situation like flying. I will say that in many cases, when you fly for an extended period of time, especially we're going in and out of the scanners, and there's just a lot of disruption to our system when we're in kind of travel mode. So these mitigation techniques may not be strong enough. So it's really important when you get to where you're going that you do some things to help offset the damage. The absolute best thing you can do is walk barefoot on the earth. And if you've got a beach you can walk on, that's fantastic. If not, you're going to want to walk on soil. You want your bare feet to be touching the earth. And typically 10 to 20 minutes is enough, honestly, to help reset your body. The other thing you can do is really make sure you plug into nature. If you can go on a hike where there's rocks, big rocks are really great. Sit on a rock and have it touch your bare skin, touch it with your hands. That'll really help to draw the negative energy out and reset your all these processes, including your circadian rhythms that we talked about a moment ago. The other thing too, that if you can't get out into nature, if you just went straight from the airport to the hotel, it can be very helpful to use some sort of cleansing bath. Epsom salt with some baking soda is really great. This is the thing that Gwyneth Paltrow says she does when she gets off a plane. Now, Gwyneth can afford to stay in maybe the nicer room that's got a nice soaking tub. If we don't have access to that, then you're going to have to revert to my suggestion to get outside and get your bare feet on the earth. But boy, if you can take a nice Epsom salt bath in the soaking tub, that is really going to just soothe you right into your new environment. So now let's talk about a health issue that often flies under the radar, so to speak, and that's geopathic stress. This comes from natural earth energies primarily, but it can also be caused by man-made electromagnetic frequencies. These energetic disturbances can mess with our body's rhythms, especially for women who might feel off but just can't figure out why. Symptoms caused by geopathic stress can be confusing and hard to pinpoint, and that makes them easy to overlook. While we can't completely avoid these energies, knowing about them is the first step to developing a strategy to deal with them. And we can take simple steps to lessen our impact and help our bodies cope better. So let's look into how we can recognize these signs and find ways to improve our health in the crossfire of geopathic stress. So what exactly is geopathic stress, and why should women know about it? Well, geopathic stress is defined as the distortion of the Earth's natural vibrations, so typically around 8 hertz. This is caused by underground features like certain minerals or fault lines or even underground streams. Electromagnetic fields are areas of energy created by the movement of electric charges. And so the human body is basically a rechargeable battery and it runs on electricity. So don't be surprised that your body is affected by a disturbance in the movement of these electrical charges within the atmosphere or environment that you're in. These electrical charges consist of both electric and magnetic components, and they can be generated by natural sources like the Earth's magnetic field or man-made sources like power lines, electrical appliances, and other wireless devices. EMFs are classified into two main categories: ionizing radiation like X-rays and gamma rays that can damage DNA directly, and non-ionizing radiation, including the extremely low frequency and radio frequency fields. These are not known to cause direct cellular damage, but we are finding more and more correlation as these frequencies are becoming more widespread in their use. The strength of EMFs decreases rapidly with distance from the source, and so that is obviously helpful. But what we're finding is that we're bringing these things into our homes, and they're coming closer and closer to where we really are spending the majority of our time, and so our bodies are under more and more of an influence from them. So low frequency EMFs are produced by these electrical devices and power lines, and the high frequency EMFs are used in the wireless communications. Either way, the potential health effects of long-term exposure to these various types of EMFs continue to be a subject of scientific research and even public health concern. Women are particularly sensitive to energy disruptions, and this can affect our hormones and immune systems. This heightened sensitivity may lead to persistent health issues that are often appearing as unexplained medical conditions or even hormonal imbalance. So, how do you detect geopathic stress? Well, one of the best ways is to use dowsing techniques. Now, before you just write this off as totally woo-woo, know that these dowsing techniques have been used for thousands of years. The dowsing technique uses copper L rods to identify geopathic zones, and practitioners that are trained to use these L rods note energy shifts when crossing affected areas. So I will share my own personal experience. I owned an office building with a partner many, many years ago. It's, been 30 years ago now. But this was a empty lot before we built this building, and we had to excavate it and really dig deep into the earth. And it was fascinating. We had an underground parking garage, and what we found was that over time, a really disproportionate number of the cars parking in the garage would have their battery drained. And so one of the women that worked with me at the time knew about these dowsing techniques, and she said, I know this sounds really woo-woo, but we need to get somebody in here to see if there's some sort of energetic disturbance going on. And sure enough, when we had the dowser come and check out the parking garage, we found that this was a sacred site that we had disturbed, essentially, not knowing, and we had to basically use some woo-woo techniques and processes to help to restore the sacred site and essentially ask permission to disrupt it, since we had already disrupted it and there was no going back at this point. But just know that that these energies are invisible, and if something odd is going on, if you've got some mysterious situation that there's no explanation for, it's possible that there's something that's disrupted the energy flow that can be set right if you get the right combination of mitigation techniques put together. So it's not hopeless. You just have to do a lot of digging and typically have a really open mind in that process. Verification can be done through georesistivity meters. There's a Lecher antenna reading potentially that might be helpful, and magnetic field intensity measurements. The readings typically are found to be around 160 Tesla, and that indicates a really high stress. You might also want to turn to body response indicators. These typically detect energetic disturbances through measuring changes in the human body voltage. And we do that using skin resistance instruments like a voltmeter or a biofeedback system. And they will show measurable differences when a person enters a geopathic stress zone. I bought a watch that is, it's not really a watch, it looks like a watch, but it's a device to measure the geopathic stress to help you sort of evaluate when you're going into an area where there's really a heightened level of this kind of disturbance. And I will tell you that we're close to an area where there's really a lot of disturbance, and literally the thing, I can't even use it because the thing goes off nonstop. I am in a zone that would be really unhealthy if I didn't use a lot of mitigation devices to help keep things in check. So it is possible that you can mitigate things. I've had to do that here where I'm at, but if you can do this before you go into a new place, wouldn't that be fantastic to test it in advance? So highly recommended if you're considering moving to a new place, going to a new office or new home to live in. Check some of these things out before you sign on the dotted line. So, how does geopathic stress affect your health, and what are some of the symptoms of geopathic stress? Well, some of the symptoms of geopathic stress include migraines, anxiety, heart or respiratory issues, including palpitations, joint and digestive problems, arthritis, numbness. Certainly insomnia. We've talked about this as we've moved through this episode here. Insomnia and restless sleep are often correlated to this energetic disturbance. You might even find that you feel fatigued in the morning despite having a seemingly decent night of sleep, meaning you slept long enough and you seem to sleep pretty soundly, but maybe you wake up feeling fatigued. That's typically a sign that your body has been sort of working to manage these stressors while somehow managing to keep you asleep. So you really don't want to hang around in that environment long term, certainly without really mitigating the damage. Some other things would be allergies, high blood pressure, or ongoing health issues that really are unexplained. The stress from these sorts of energetic disturbances causes immune system miscommunication, essentially, and then obviously dysregulation. It also increases susceptibility to infections. There was a study that I referred to in my doctorate dissertation that talked about how when somebody is exposed to some sort of bacteria or virus and they're under these types of stressors, that it takes way less of a load, essentially a viral or bacterial load, for the body to succumb and to get really sick. And so this is essentially why we find that traveling tends to be something that will result in us getting sick, and it's because our immune system is compromised due to the additional stressors, and then it really doesn't take exposure to much, and the next thing you know, whammo, we're sick. So remember, you can get the Tricky Toxins chapter of my book, What's Your Kryptonite, for free. Just comment Tricky Toxins and we'll send you a link where you can download the chapter. If commenting isn't convenient, go to drgayla.com/links and sign up for my Wellness Weekly newsletter. You can respond to any email you receive from me with Tricky Toxins and we'll send you a link. Now, let's look at some simple steps to handle geopathic stress. It can significantly affect our health, particularly during the more sensitive phases of life, like midlife for many women. Geopathic stress isn't just about feeling out of sync. It can contribute to a variety of unexplained symptoms and increase our vulnerability to other health issues. I just pointed that out very clearly a couple of moments ago. So making small changes to our daily routines can greatly help mitigate these effects and boost the body's natural ability to adapt. And don't forget, after we wrap up, drop a comment to share which strategy you're planning to implement to combat geopathic stress and why you believe they'll be effective in your health journey. So you may still be one of those skeptics wondering if this whole idea of geopathic stress or EMF related energetic disturbance is even a thing. There is some research behind the effects of geopathic stress, and there is mounting scientific evidence from controlled studies. Research at institutions like the AIIMS in Delhi has documented significant differences in health parameters between geopathic and non-geopathic zones, with p-values is the way they measure this, confirming statistical significance. Some of the measurable biomarkers from the studies show consistent patterns of changes in body voltage, skin resistance, heart rate variability, and blood pressure when subjects move from normal areas to geopathic stress zones. There's also the possibility of using thermal imaging evidence, and so I recommend using thermography for monitoring breast health for women our age. It's the same sort of technology that you would use here. Medical thermal imaging, or MTI, it's being used to visualize the body's response to geopathic stress, and this shows temperature changes when subjects move from non-stress to stress zones. So how do you combat geopathic stress in your home? What kind of remedies can you use? Well, to start with, you want to make sure that you're really evaluating where the hot spots are in your home, where things maybe are really being strongly disturbed, and you do that with meters. Once you kind of identify these hot zones, then you're going to want to make sure that you place your furniture strategically. So you don't want your sofa that maybe you're spending hours regularly watching movies or television right inside a really hot zone. Especially beds, you want to make sure that in your sleeping environment is really well managed. If you cannot rearrange your furniture, you're going to want to use some of these mitigation devices. And I'll tell you, they're not inexpensive, but your health is invaluable and sleep is really non-negotiable. If you're finding that your sleep is disturbed, or you're seeing signs that maybe you're not sleeping as soundly and your body's not doing the rest and repair work it needs to do, then you want to make sure that your sleeping environment is really, really well managed. I talk a lot about the effects of insomnia on this channel, and so you can find quite a few videos if you'll just do a search on my channel. There are some other protective materials that you might use. Copper rods or other grounding devices. I use a lot of different devices to help me mitigate the effects of the geopathic stress that I know I'm living under. But one of those includes a grounding sheet that I use on the bed, and it really does make a difference. It's best when you sleep without clothes on and you're on these devices with your bare skin. But just know that these kinds of things really can make a difference and are worth investing in. They neutralize or block the negative energies from these geopathic stressors. Some of the other things that have been known to help are using crystals. You can place crystals like shungite or black tourmaline, amethyst, or quartz around your home to absorb the negative energies. Also, indoor plants are really great to purify the air and cleanse your home environment. I will say that I have pretty much given up on live plants. They require a lot of maintenance, and I just do not have the patience or the green thumb to deal with them. So again, I've turned to more expensive techniques, including quite expensive air purifiers to take care of the job that a lot of indoor plants would do. But if you're one of those people who has a green thumb, then the indoor plants are an awesome addition to your home. Something else that might really help is positioning a small fountain or even aquarium to enhance this positive energy flow. And I've tried this too. A fountain, I tend to find that they have overspray and create a mess. And if I forget to unplug it when I go out of town, I come back and the water's dried up and the little pump is dead. I've got to replace that. I've also had an aquarium in the past, and while I love the aquarium, my cat loved it even more. But again, whenever I traveled, my mom would have to try to clean it for me. And one time she forgot to wash her cream off of her arms before she went into the tank to clean the tank and killed all the fish. So some of these alternatives are really great if you are not minding a lot of home maintenance and you hang out at home and rarely travel. But if you're somebody like me, I need things that can easily be turned off, that are technology I can turn to get the job done. And yes, would my home be much more serene and comfortable if I had some of these water features and live plants? Certainly, but I've just found that my busy, hectic life and lifestyle is not really conducive to using these methods. I will stick with my technology that gets the job done. Also know that ensuring areas are well lit, preferably with natural sunlight, will really boost the energy quality. And, this is another issue that I deal with where I'm at. And again, I have to use technology to offset this, particularly red light therapy. Some supplements can be helpful. I don't recommend using any supplements long term, but if you're really trying to mitigate the effects of maybe an overdose of this type of exposure, you can use CoQ10 to help to reset your cellular processes. Vitamin E can also be really helpful here. Trace elements, if you are finding that you're having issues sleeping, it's a pretty strong sign that you've got a mineral disturbance. And so using a really high quality mineral complex that incorporates copper, magnesium, manganese, selenium into your diet can really go a long way. I would use these minerals for potentially 1 to 3 weeks and then take a break. Your body should be able to manage that on its own from there, unless you're being bombarded with this kind of thing on a day-to-day basis. In that case, you want to make sure you're doing some of the other things I suggested to mitigate the effects. Another thing that's really helpful is earthing or grounding, spending time outdoors to ground yourself and to basically soak in nature or let nature pull out of you the toxicity. So this is really helpful, and I mentioned it previously in this episode how important it is to get your bare feet on the earth, on the soil or beach. I love to walk barefoot on the beach. That's one of my favorite things to do. Not that easy to do in the winter, so you have to have, again, alternatives. Some other things you can do are just practice meditation, use other stress reduction exercises when you feel your system kind of racing, like some sort of energetic disturbances going on. You can use these kind of techniques, and typically what you'll find is that the techniques will help you soothe your nervous system. But if you find that you get jacked right back up, that's a sign that there's something else going on, and you need to really get to the bottom of it and use some stronger mitigation techniques. As you know, I'm an acupuncturist, so acupuncture can be really helpful to jumpstart your body's energy process. I actually use a very specific form of microcurrent that is really great at rebalancing the disruptive frequencies with balancing frequencies. So that's another possibility. Reiki, if you've got a Reiki practitioner or Reiki master, that can be helpful as well. And not surprising, engaging in some sort of regular physical activity will boost your endorphins and reduce stress. And so if you can tick a lot of boxes by walking barefoot on the beach, then you can get some sunshine and vitamin D exposure in the best possible way. Suck out some of these disruptive energies through the earth, and then get some endorphins going from the movement. So really, if you've got the ability to walk on the beach, that's where you need to be. Focus on establishing really good sleep habits. I've talked about this already in this episode, and refer to some of my other videos related to insomnia, and I give you lots of tips there. It really, really makes a difference when you avoid the blue screens. And so I've got a whole video on why you need to avoid blue screens and what to do about blue screen exposure. So I will refer you to that video as well. The answers I give to questions I receive quite often apply to and would be helpful for most women. I've accumulated a few related questions, and I'll answer them in this segment that I call Ask Away. If you'd like to ask a question, I created a form so that it's sure to get answered, and your question could be shared in a future episode, helping many other women. So comment question and we'll get you a link to the form. If commenting isn't convenient, go to drgala.com/links and sign up for my Wellness Weekly newsletter. You can respond to any email you receive from me with question, and we'll send you a link. So how does prolonged exposure to geopathic stress affect different parts of the body, like the head, the chest, or even the extremities? So what geopathic stress does is create essentially internal heat. And for an acupuncturist, oriental medicine practitioner, internal heat is the way we describe some of the anomalies essentially that happen with our health. You're going to find that you end up with headaches, hypertension, potentially high blood pressure, even inflammation. And if you go back and listen to the whole episode, I will talk more about these things in particular. But, inflammation is going to affect joints. Certainly, if you're getting frequent headaches, it is very much possible that this would be related to some sort of geopathic stress that's in your environment. And it definitely can lead to abnormal heart regulation. Your heart is really dependent on electrical signals, and these geopathic stressors, this electromagnetic frequency, really is electrical disturbance. And so it's not surprising that it would lead to some sort of disturbance with the electrical signals with your heart. And that can lead to high blood pressure, low blood pressure, or any other sort of dysregulation that could be occurring. So, really, long term exposure is something that needs to be mitigated. And again, in the episode, I talked about lots of different ways to mitigate it. That, if you are really in a situation where you can't relocate and you're going to have to deal with it, then you are going to have to make sure that you are using everything available to ease your body's system, particularly immune system and the HPA axis, the axis between the pituitary and adrenals. If you're finding that you're really stressed, and really you're stressed regardless of what you're doing to mitigate it, it could be pointing to this geopathic stress issue. I've been dealing with arthritis for years, and lately my migraines are getting worse too. Could this geopathic stress have anything to do with it? Well, headaches could definitely be related to geopathic stress. This is one of the things that is often reported by people that have had some sort of disruption happen in their environment. They may have moved and had some sort of new disruptor introduced. They may have gotten a new job. Some things happen, like even a smart meter gets installed on their home. The electric company doesn't even have to let you know they did that, and that's been known to create a disruption, causing headaches and causing sleep disturbance. It really leads to inflammation and autoimmune dysregulation. And so if you've got something like arthritis, it's important to know if the arthritis is inflammation really due to overuse or autoimmune dysregulation. Both can be caused or certainly contributed to by geopathic stress, but it helps to sort of unravel the mystery if you know what the underlying cause is of your arthritic condition. It's really important to reduce any avoidable stress. If you've got a situation where you are being exposed to these energetic disturbances and you really don't have any control over it, then the most important thing you can do is to reduce any avoidable stress and then use some of the mitigation techniques that I talked about in the episode. I really encourage you to go back and listen to the whole episode. My sleep has been terrible lately. I toss and turn all night. Do you think it could be caused by geopathic stress zones? Well, the first thing I would ask you is if you have moved. And so if you've moved recently or even changed jobs, that can point to having introduced some new factor, essentially, that could be contributing to it. If you haven't moved, if you haven't gotten a new job, if you haven't gotten a new car, if you haven't really done anything, even possibly taken a trip, like gone on an extended vacation, flown for an extended period of time on a long flight, if you haven't done anything like that and these things just like kind of showed up out of nowhere, certainly you want to see your doctor and get checked to make sure that there's nothing going on, that's some new thing that that needs to be diagnosed and a treatment plan arrived at. But if your environment hasn't changed, you may find that that they've installed a smart meter. The electric company may have installed a smart meter on your home, and many people, especially women, have reported sleep disturbance, headaches, that sort of thing after a smart meter was installed on their home. There are ways to mitigate this, but you want to see if that is contributing to it. Maybe they've installed a new cell tower very close to your home, or they've just rolled out 5G. These kind of things can really create disturbance for you. And some people are not sensitive to it and manage to pretty much go on unscathed. But for many women, and particularly those of us that are really sensitive, we'll find that we feel the energetic disturbance very quickly. You want to make sure that you're turning your Wi-Fi off at night and that you're not using screens after dark, particularly within those 2 or 3 hours before sleep. Super important. If you're feeling some sort of disturbance, that you are doing everything you possibly can to eliminate any additional stressors that you have control over, or including turning the Wi-Fi off, avoiding the blue screens 2 to 3 hours before bed. Sometimes we just have no control over these geopathic stressors, and even while we're trying to figure out how to mitigate them, they can be doing real damage. So it's really important to minimize that. Is there some kind of gadget I can use to check if my house has this geopathic stress? I'm worried about it, but don't know how to tell if it's a problem. Yes, there are gadgets you can use, including meters. In the episode, I shared about using dowsers or a dowsing technique to evaluate this energetic disturbance. And dowsers and dowsing has been used for thousands of years. So before you write it off as a method that's just too woo-woo for you, let me share my experience. My partner and I built a building where I used to live many years ago. This has been like 30 years ago now, so it's been a long time. But we built the building from scratch. It was a vacant lot before we started, and they had to excavate for the parking garage. What we found was that the car batteries for those parking in the underground garage were being drained disproportionately. I mean, it was becoming quite a problem, and it's sort of like the more it happened, the more it happened. And so one of the women that worked for me said, I know this dowsing technique sounds a little woo-woo, but I really think we should get this person to look into it. And I was all for it. I've been into woo-woo pretty much all my adult life. So we had a dowser evaluate the building. It turned out that the building had been built on a sacred site, and we had disturbed this sacred site by excavating for the parking garage. Of course, this is all like invisible energy. We had no way of knowing this in advance. And so we had to use some methods to essentially restore the energetic balance on the site. And I won't go into the details, but just know that the batteries stopped being drained and we didn't have a problem going forward. So this kind of thing, really, it's invisible energy. You're not going to be able to see it. If you are one of those people with a closed mind, then honestly, I can't help you. But if you've got some mysterious situation going on, either with your health or, as I mentioned here, like with my parking garage, I really encourage you to just open your mind and be willing to try some of these other things that can introduce you to ideas and information that was not available to you previously by looking to some method that's been more well documented. And this tends to be why people have so many problems getting to the bottom of some of these issues, because these solutions are not readily available. I've heard stories about people moving houses and suddenly feeling better. Are there any real cases where moving away from a geopathic zone actually helped someone's health? Well, in my book, What's Your Kryptonite?, I share the story of Julie, and I won't tell you Julie's whole story here, but her home was making her sick to the point where she was in a wheelchair and they really didn't think she was going to make it because nobody could figure out what was wrong with her. In her particular situation, Julie's problem was not geopathic stress. It was another one of the 12 types of toxicity that I evaluate. But just know that absolutely moving away from a super toxic environment can significantly improve your health. It's really important to recognize that some of us are just really highly sensitive. This might be because our immune system is already compromised, or we've got something else going on that's keeping us stressed. But Julie's family was not having the same kinds of issues with their health that she was, yet she was living in the same house they were. And so it doesn't affect everybody the same. So just because not everybody is experiencing the problem doesn't mean that there's not a problem in the environment. Remember too that you want to try mitigation. If you have a little bit of time, meaning you've caught this fairly early and you're not super sick already, just know that there are mitigation techniques that you can use for these geopathic stressors, including grounding, which will essentially negate the effects of them. You just need to acknowledge that the disturbance is happening first and that you're going to need to do something about it. And then you can really apply a mitigation technique, see how much improvement you got, apply another one, see how much improvement you got. What I find is that I apply a mitigation technique and that improves things and I see an improvement, but then I find that I'll revert a little bit, and it's because it improved it some, I got some relief, but I'm still in the environment, so I have to apply now another level of mitigation. And obviously, if you're in a situation where you can't relocate, then these sorts of mitigation efforts are going to absolutely be required if you want to be healthy and remain productive. And remember, if you'd like me to answer your specific question, make sure to comment question and we'll send you a link to the submission form. You'll want to subscribe to the channel notifications to get regular updates. And that's a wrap for this episode. This has been the Let's Talk Toxins show. Make sure you subscribe to my channel on YouTube and activate the notifications. You'll get a reminder when I'm going live next. Until then, be well.